Hello, welcome back to the channel. So I feel that the paths in the game have at least recently been getting characters fairly equally, even if some paths like Harmony have been getting more characters than others. But there is one path in the game that has kind of been neglected basically since the game came out, which is Preservation. We haven't gotten a new Preservation character in over a year. And it took a year before that to get him, because we got Fushuan in 1.3. So I've been kind of wondering why do we just not get any Preservation characters at all? We get abundance characters and just healers in general more than Preservation characters. And I think that there is a couple of reasons for why we just don't really get them. One, Sustains in general are just some of the least pulled characters in the game, which, to be fair, I do think this is partially just because their banners are almost always at terrible times. They're always either right before or right after a really hyped character. Aventurine was right after Acheron, so most people weren't really that excited for him, at least before he came out. Lingsha was right after Feishao, so a lot of people didn't really pull for her. Hyacinth was right before Phaidon and the Fate event, so a lot of people didn't really get her either. So that definitely isn't really doing them any favors, but also I feel like most people feel like they don't really need more than maybe 2 or 3 sustains. So I feel like most people would rather pull for supports or DPS characters than get another sustained character. Having the key support on your team is usually way more important than having the key sustain on your team, Also Preservation doesn't really have any of their big exciting characters. Acheron or Phaidon level characters. The closest thing is maybe Aventurine, since he is a fan favorite character now. But I don't think he is quite at the same level, and also I feel that most people were excited for him after they played the story. I feel like most people weren't that excited for him before his release. 2 is that Hoyo, I think generally is just right now just pushing healing way more than shielding, just because of the archetypes that they have. We've gotten 3 healers and only 1 shielder in the same amount of time. Characters like Castris and Mighty, mainly wanting healers on their team. I think it's mainly just Hoyo wanting to push healing more rather than them not wanting to make Preservation characters. I do think it kind of makes sense to have a bit more healers than shielders, because in most teams that aren't built around healing, a shielder would almost always be better than a healer doing the same job, since just not taking damage in the first place is a lot better than having to heal the damage back up, and shields can also, prevent one-shots, which is pretty important against some of the faster bosses like Hule, who can just attack in the same amount of times. But I feel at least right now, the main reason a lot of people don't really use Preservation characters is, one, like I said, because some teams just mainly want healers, but also because there just isn't many options for Preservation characters, and there are only, I would say only really 2 actually good ones, like Japard can be okay, but I think there are just better options. Then March and Preservation MC are just really bad, and they do really need kind of full reworks, honestly. Fushuan and Aventurines are the only one I would call good. So I feel now we kind of have the opposite problem, where healing is kind of just super overshadowing shielding, unlike what was before when Aventurine came out, where he kind of just overshadowed every single healer. And it doesn't help that almost every single Preservation character is a 5-star, so it's even harder to get them. Preservation, I think, as a path, is just pretty limited in what you can do with it in terms of design. Because I feel most of the characters that we have would already fill any sort of role you would want for a Preservation character. We already have, a damage reduction character with Fushuan. We have a shielder that can also do damage with Aventurine. We have sort of tankier kind of shielders with Preservation MC and Japard. And March, who's sort of a debuff freeze sort of shielder. She kind of just does everything, but just not that well. So even if some of these characters are definitely better than others, most of the roles are already kind of filled out. The only thing I could maybe see is a more sort of offensive focused shielder with the Quake mechanic or something, since Aventurine can do good damage, but I wouldn't say he's really focused solely on being offensive as much as someone Gallagher is. So I feel you could have a Gallagher equivalent for Preservation. But besides that, I have no idea, because I feel most of the ideas you could do would just be kind of bad. which is why I think the devs just haven't really been making many of them, is because they just don't really know what to do with the path. Now, do I think that any of this really justifies not getting a preservation character for a whole year. No, since I mean they're like a billion-dollar company, I'm sure they could figure it out. But also, since like every other path has been getting characters like somewhat equally. I mean, obviously, like the DPS paths are getting the most characters since that they are just the most exciting, and let's be honest, they just make the most money. But like, preservation should still get like some characters, at least more than like once a year. Now, like one thing that I have seen some people say is that they could maybe be saving it for like the Stonehearts. I mean, they are the characters that follow preservation, but I don't really think that's true because I mean, Topaz and Jade are part of that, and they are different paths from preservation. So I would assume that each of the Stonehearts would just be a different path. So I don't really think that they would all just make them the same path because I think that would just be kind of boring. And like the reason I think it is important to get more preservation characters is because for a lot of people, an entire path is basically just locked out of the game, since Fushuan, Japard, and Aventurine are all 5 stars, and the only 4-star option we have is March. It is still one of the only paths in the game that hasn't gotten a 4-star post-release, except like Remembrance and Erudition. But Remembrance is new, so I can like kind of forgive it, and we also got Remembrance MC, who is really good. So and like at least Erudition has like Small Herda and like Survival for like specific teams. March even has like a better form now, so like why would you ever use like base March? I mean, I guess there's also Preservation MC, but like why would you use that over like any of the newer forms? I mean, at least Fushuan is on the like 50-50 thing now, so you could like lose to her and get her, but that's still just relying on luck to get the characters. So you could just never get her, and Aventurine isn't always on banner, so most of the time you're just going to be using healers. Now this is definitely just like partially an extension of the fact that we just don't really get 4 stars at all, but like, okay, this is going to be kind of a rant, but like, if they aren't going to do 4 stars, at least make the 5-star options easier to get with more rewards, so that people can actually feel like they can make better teams, but we aren't getting that either, since we're barely getting any events. Like, I don't understand. Anyway, I'm going on a rant. Like, I don't know. At the end of the day, like, Preservation has just been, like, consistently getting the short end of the stick in the game. Like, it's just getting nothing. Like, I can understand, like, wanting healers to shine and, making characters that want healers mostly on their team, but, like, there should at least be some sort of, like, equality, and not having one for a whole year is insane. And I think with like how a lot of the more better healers are now, you could make more preservation characters without them like overshadowing them, since I mean we have characters like Hyacinth now, or even like Ho-Ho, or just really good in general, and I doubt making like a shielder would take away from that unless their numbers were just like absurd. At the bare minimum, like at least buff characters like Japard and Preservation MC, since they have been like lackluster basically since the game came out, and buffing them would at least give people more preservation options instead of just like 2. But I don't know, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.